Next, we will have two oral presentations. Our first speaker is Abharavan Gautam Reddy from IIT Hyderabad. Okay, let's check. Okay, you can start whenever you want.
Yeah, thank you, Yule. Hello, everyone. I'm Gautam. I'm a PhD student at IIT Hyderabad, India. I'll present our work on creating an image dataset for causal analysis in disentangled representations. This is a joint work with my colleague Benny and our faculty advisor, Professor Vineet. Yeah, we'll first start by asking the question why we need causality in machine learning or AI. If you look at the current machine learning models, they are in some tasks show human level performance, for example, predicting MNIST digits. And then sometimes they show even better performance, for example, playing in chess or Go. So, but they come with two problems. They are considered to be black box. That means we don't know how they work internally, and they're also considered to be correlational, meaning they use purely correlational data, correlations among the input features to come up with a decision. These two problems raises the questions on reliability and trustworthiness. Then, why do we need causality? Again, just now we discussed the two problems. Using causality helps us to solve these two problems. That means we can avoid the problem of learning input-output correlations, and also causality helps us to provide human understandable explanations. Here we mean by human understandable explanations that we are not claiming that the model gives the correct explanations, but we are claiming that we need some causal explanations, whether they are correct or not correct. And fortunately, we have some well-established theory uh, by Pearl and others, and there are many use cases in social science, epidemiology, and economics, and we saw many of them today. And in causality, in specific, we choose to study confounding. Why do we need confounding analysis? For example, what is confounding is something like it's a situation where you observe a spurious correlations among a set of say two features that is caused by another variable. This common cause can be hidden or visible in experiments, and when it is hidden, it's very difficult to perform confounding analysis. And we all know that machine learning models rely on these correlations while making decisions. So obviously, studying confounding would be very helpful to improve the explainability, and it has many applications in fairness, disentanglement, etc., and also helps to learn from limited examples. Obviously, why is that true? Because when we are able to remove the spurious correlations, then we don't need too many data points to learn. Coming to the our work, Candle. Our work is motivated by looking at the fact that we have very limited image data sets for causal analysis, for example, counterfactual evaluation and confounding analysis, and limitations in those existing data sets. And overall, Candle provides the solutions like the images in Candle are realistic with complex backgrounds, and we have confounding with improved realism. And most importantly, it is synthetic in generation, but the images are very realistic, and it is very useful to conduct further research to improve the data sets and to generate even large scale data sets with a limited cost. And images are rendered using Blender, a free open source 3D graphic software. Blender helps us to use HDRI background images, and we can put some 3D primitives like cubes, spheres, torus, and so on the HDRI images. And the reason we use HDRI backgrounds is that the foreground objects that we put in in the HDRI backgrounds naturally interacts with the light that is already present in the HDRI background images. And having such kind of background images and natural interaction between light sources improves the realism of the dataset a lot. And figure 1, as you can see, shows the causal graph that based on which the candle dataset is generated. Here you can see we have an unobserved confounder U that is causing both light and scene. It's a hypothetical variable. Here we mean unconfounding in the sense that, as we just saw, the scene itself contains a natural light. Maybe it's a sunlight or any other light source that is implicit in the HDRI background. And in addition to that, we also have a artificial light as a generative factor. These two generative factors cast shadows of foreground objects in two different directions and making it difficult for any model to identify the light source. And when it comes to a problem at hand, where you may have semantic constraints imposed by the problem at your hand, where you are not allowed to use certain objects in certain scenes with certain sizes. And we can easily select the subset of candle to mimic that semantic constraints. And even the one more advantage of candle dataset is that it is easy to extend to impose these kinds of constraints. And these are the generative factors that we use to generate candle dataset. On the left, you can see the 6 generative factors that are correspond to the causal graph that you saw in the previous slide. And the values taken by these generative factors are listed here. And these are some sample images from candle. As you can see, we have the real HDRI background images. On top of that, we added some 3D primitives like cones, torus, spheres, and so on. And we compare candle with various existing data sets to visually to visually analyze that we are very different from existing data sets. And as you can see, none of the data sets and none of the existing data sets that are used in disentanglement representation in specific do not have any complex background. So when we have simple foreground objects, it's easy for any model to learn them. And when we have complex background and small foreground objects, the models find it difficult to learn the disentangled representation. And to further compare candle with existing data sets along various other dimensions, you can see candle has the desired rate of most of the requirements for any causal analysis. For example, confounders. None of the existing datasets contain confounders. And one can argue that subset selection of any existing dataset may mimic the confounding, but the confounding in candle dataset is due to the careful selection of the images that may improve the realism of the dataset, and that may helpful to mimic the semantic constraints at hand. Once we have a candle dataset, we ask counterfactual questions on the dataset. For example, if we take any image and we ask counterfactual question, what would let's say coming back to one of the images, if you look at the top left image, we ask the counterfactual question: what would be the image look like when we have object to be sphere, let's say sphere. And to answer that question, any generative model or any disentanglement model should learn the generative factors, and then it has to generate the counterfactual image. So you can see that there are two tasks involved: isolating the generative factors and then generating the image. So these two tasks motivate us to develop two evaluation metrics on any disentangled representation method. So there are some metrics available in literature. For example, one metric that is close to our work is interventional robustness score. it works on the principles of interventions. And there are other metrics that are based on mutual information and are predicting generative factors using latent dimensions and so on. But only one of the metrics, which is IRS, is developed using the principles of causality. So that's a good motivation for us to develop along that direction. Again, from the same paper, which introduced interventional robustness score, we have some concept called disentangled causal process, where any generative, if we can disentangle any generative factor, any generative model into a set of independent causal mechanisms, we will be able to generate counterfactual images very flexibly. We'll see that in a minute. So a disentangled causal mechanism should generate images without any influence from confounders. Disentangled causal mechanisms can be intervened for flexible generation. For example, going back to our causal graph, if we are able to disentangle each of the edges here, that means then we can generate any image of our choice. For example, let's say our data set has some confounding. Let's say some scenes doesn't contain some objects. And when we disentangle this causal process, we are effectively removing the influence from confounders to the generative factors. That means now in our generative model, we can treat each of the generative factors, light, scene, object, and so on till angle, as independent factors, and we can intervene on them and to generate any counterfactual images in a flexible manner. And one more important thing is that the two metrics that we introduce capture the entire causal process. For example, in figure 5 that you are seeing, the UC metric, we'll come to that UC in a bit. We develop two metrics. One is UC and another is CG. UC is a short form for unconfoundedness. So UC captures the relationship between generative factors and the images that are generated and the latent dimensions Z. And when we come to counterfactual generativeness captures the relationship among images and latent dimensions and corresponding reconstructions. So that way we could cover the entire causal process of the data generating mechanism, and we can and then we have more control, or the better way of evaluating any disentanglement method. Again, coming to the formal introduction of unconfoundedness and counterfactual generativeness, in UC, we asked the question, how do latent variable models perform when trained on confounded data sets? Again, recall the definition of disentangled causal process. So the presence of confounders should not affect how generative factors influence outcome variable. So we call this idea, or we call this as unconfoundedness. That means we are able to unconfound the generative factors from the confounding variables, be it observed or unobserved. And coming to counterfactual generativeness, we asked the question, how do these latent variable models generate counterfactual images? It is easy to see that, as we discussed just now, if UC is achieved, if we achieve the unconfoundedness in the generative model, then counterfactual images can be generated without any confounding bias. So we call this idea counterfactual generativeness. Visually, looking at the unconfoundedness metric, it is easy to see that from figure, where we have latent dimensions Z1 to Z4 and generative factors G1 to G3. So what unconfoundedness says is, it is allowed that Z1 and Z3 to capture generative factor G1. For example, let's say we have a generative factor called angle. One latent dimension can capture sine theta of that, and another latent dimension can capture cos theta of that. So it is completely allowed for the. It is completely allowed to. It is completely allowed that that way of capturing latents of generative factors, but it is not allowed that Z4, which is a single latent dimension to capture both generative factors G2 and G3. Because here it is clear that Z4 is confounding G2 and G3. So UC metric penalizes such kind of encodings. Coming to the formula below, this is how we define UC metric. So in a sense, we are calculating the Jaccard similarity of the pair of between each pair of latent dimensions that are corresponding to pair of generative factors. Here in the formula, QIX are the latent dimension set of rather you could say set of latent dimensions that are corresponding to an image X. And to get QIX, that means the latent dimensions corresponding to generative factor I for a specific image X, we use IRS metric. And then we take a different tool to calculate the UC metric as shown here. And to define counterfactual generativeness metric, we need some notations and definitions. Let's say we use the notation GI to denote ith generative factor, and we use the notation GIK superscript X to denote the kth value taken by ith generative factor. For example, I can be shape and K can be any specific value taken by that shape, for example, cone. So this is all for a given X. And let us use the notation capital Z to denote the set of latent dimensions, which is that is of size M of a model. Maybe let's say a variation autoencoder model. And we use the notation capital I, that is a subset of set of integers 1 to m. We call 1 is the set of m is the set size of the latent dimensions, and we can use this set I to index the latent dimension Z. And we use the notation Z sub set minus I to denote the set latent dimensions that are indexed by the set 1 to m minus I. And we need the definition of or the notion of average causal effect. So we all know that for a binary random variable X, the average causal effect of X on Y is defined as the expectation of Y when we intervene X to be 1 and minus the expectation of Y when we intervene X to be 0. Now we define counterfactual generativeness matrix CG as the average causal effects of these latent dimensions on the generated counterfactual images. Notice that we take the expectation over capital I, which is a set of latent dimensions corresponding to a generative factor I. Now we try to approximate the average causal effect with using individual causal effects taken over the entire data set. So now the formula becomes 1 over n. Here n is the number of generative factors times 1 over L, where L is the data set size. So we can approximate the average causal effect with individual causal effects. So in a sense, the counterfactual generativeness metric is trying to calculate the difference in average individual causal effects of latent dimensions on the counterfactual image generated. Now expanding the each individual causal effect term, there is a problem here, because the average causal effect definition that we just saw is defined on the real random variables, but our target random variable here is an image. So, and our treatment variable is a latent dimension. So there is no clear way of defining the causal effects of latent dimensions on the latent dimensions on the images. So for this work, we choose to use the difference in prediction probability of the generative factor I of an image given when we set the latent dimensions to the current latent dimensions and compare it with the prediction probability of GIK given the counterfactual image when we set the latent dimensions to be a baseline value. Here we choose the baseline value to be the maximally deviated latent values from ZIX taken from the dataset to make sure that we get reasonably different image than the current image. And these are the results that we get. Synthetic data set. Coming to the synthetic data set description, to find the to analyze the disentanglement methods performance on the models that are on the data set with extreme confounding. We create a data set. It's a very simple tie data set where cylinders appear in red, cones appear in green, and cubes appear in blue. That's the only setting available. When we run unconfoundedness metric, we get a value of 0. Here, rho equal to 1. Rho meaning that the number of generative factors, number of latent dimensions that we attribute to each generative factors. Remember, in UC metric, we define QIX to be the set of latent dimensions. So when rho equal to 1, we mean that this QIX is a singleton set. And so is a low score for CG, because when we can't perform UC, and then CG is also not possible. And on the other hand, IRS metric gives the score close to 1. Maybe a indicator that IRS may not be useful for analyzing the performance of disentanglement methods when there is a confounding. And coming to the results on our data set, we choose a subset of our data set. We call it confounded candle. And this confounding is chosen such that certain objects are available in only certain colors. That can be seen from table 4. And when we look at the results, when rho equal to 1, the UC score, the best UC score that we observe is 0.8. And when we, of course, this is not a very good score to say, because we need perfect score of 1 to make sure that we get perfect causal disentanglement. And when we increase the rho value to 2, that means when we attribute 2 latent dimensions for each generative factor, we observe that there is a significant drop in the UC score, which reveals that the limitations in the existing models to capture the disentanglement under confounding. Here we experiment on 4 state-of-the-art disentanglement methods, say called beta VAE, beta TC VAE, dip VAE, and factor VAE, and corresponding semi-supervised methods. And we also experimented on Dsprites dataset. Here we don't choose any confounding. We test on complete full Dsprites dataset, and we observe that we get 0.9 UC score when rho equal to 1, which indicates that models are doing well in disentangling the generative factors. Again, when we increase the rho value to 2, we again see the significant decrease in the performance of these models. Key takeaways from CANDLE and our metrics are: CANDLE addresses many limitations in the existing data sets, and it is easy to extend CANDLE. We just need to change few lines of source code to generate new versions of CANDLE. And our metric show the limitations of existing models in capturing the unconfounded representations. And our metrics can also be used even if there is no confounding in the data sets, as revealed from the previous experiments, Dsprites. Yeah. Thank you. I would like to take questions.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Maybe we have not enough time for the question on stream. So if there's any question from the audience, maybe you can chat in the chat box. Thank you again. Thanks for the talk.